You don't know how sweet I am. You don't know how sweet I am. I am what I am, and I am sweet. You don't know how sweet I am.
Yo, check this. I might not be what you want me to be, so you might not see what you want to see. But if you got a minute, listen to what I gotta say, cause it's a brand new year and it's a brand new day. See, there's a gap between my culture and the life that I lead, so some will call me an apple, and some a bad seed. They have no idea how my heart will bleed. Their words and attitudes are things I just don't need.
You don't know how sweet I am. I am what I am, and I am sweet.
You see, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of where I'm from. Those ones spreading racism, they're just fucking dumb. Now if you're looking at my life, and you say I've assimilated, to simplify things, just a little more complicated. See, I'm a modern day native, with a modern day life. I have modern day problems, and modern day strife. Now I hear other natives, they talk about the past, and will I do the same? Fuck that. See, I've got no time to dwell on what's already done. I've got too many things that I want to do. And they don't include knives, and they don't include guns. I'm talking about knowledge and sharing it too. See, my people need to learn how to cohabitate, get rid of the anger, and get rid of the hate. We gotta stop for a minute and learn to educate, and you'll see in the end, we all have to communicate. I know there'll be a time to make a stand and a time to fight, but if you do that, make sure the cause is right. Because if the cause is right and the cause is just, greater numbers of people will be backing you up. History has repeatedly shown to us all that united we stand and divided we fall. They were talking about natives and natives alone, because this is a big world, and this world is our home. Now I've seen some beautiful people, and ugly ones too, and there's no single color that comes into view. So the message I'm sending, it's not all that long. It's just, I want the human race to be stronger than strong. I said I just want the human race to be stronger than strong.
You all have to be strong.
Done it. Word.
You all have to be strong. Peace.
Sugali swagwag, Galahindi neogats, Wagisli wagi, Niwakitaloda, Anita and Guhanege, Ani, Bosho, Danse, Okinapi, How, Yanko, Yukodonas. So, another day. Today's Monday, and as with Mondays, typically we do documentary days. I know that it's not actually on schedule because I'm supposed to be, I was supposed to start at 9, but um, IRL stuff's been a little crazy lately, so a little delayed. So sorry about that, but hopefully you can still enjoy what we have. I have two documentaries today. They're only maybe an hour each. So what we'll do is we'll watch one. We'll do a little song interlude to give you a chance to um, refresh drinks or snacks, whatever you need, and then we'll watch the second one. Um, so the first one we're going to watch is called Beyond Stonewall, and because the LGBTQ community really predates the history that we have here in North America with Stonewall. Although Stonewall was a huge, huge, huge turn um, for the community here on Turtle Island. Um, the what we call the LGBTQ community really does predate that and goes back so much farther. And so it's going to be interesting because I haven't watched this whole documentary either. I've only caught part of it, and it was put together by the Smithsonian. So it should be should be really well done. So I am going to let's see here. Try to switch this a little bit and go this way. Go this way. There we go. So I will also try to keep the VOD up after the stream so that anyone who had missed it or missed parts of it will still be able to see it or rewatch it later if you desire to do so. So let me first of all get to the documentary, and this is called Beyond Stonewall: Exploring the LGBTQ plus History. And again, it was done by the Smithsonian. So I hope that you will enjoy this. And so we will do our little intro vibe here as we try to get this started, and then we'll go with the documentary. Let's go here.
Gungilkwa zawadahan sios, ona angadaswa o handagali wadakwa. Ungwet su'a gwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ungwet su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas ni yakini ista ohun jage tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ohun de su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na onu kwat su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na onagat su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gahit su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gain tosula tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gojot su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na gondilio tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ogwile su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ojido ogoa tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na itisatagu ala diwailas tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na geli ni gawalage tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na sugwat jia gilkena galakwa tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na itisata santana galakwa tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na ojisto kwa su'a tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana de tinu haladas na geli ni agwedige tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Agwegwaska njedadawa wet nuni ni gwat nigula dana dachi dinu haladas na sungwai diza tinu dohak ni gwat nigula. Ona wagali wahodungo nuwani zlada dogat tena zike nigoha nizigi aizoda sundala aizawasa tinu dohak ni gwat nigula.
The 1969 Stonewall riots helped ignite the modern gay rights movement.
Out of control. Go, go.
They weren't going to go back into the closet. They were going to go be out there, and they were going to be out and proud.
It was a perfect storm of years of oppression.
But Stonewall is just one moment in the history of LGBTQ life in America.
This is a story about acceptance and about identity.
Objects at the Smithsonian tell hundreds of these stories.
Matt dreamed of a happy ever after.
And they are still being written.
I'm getting hate mail all the time.
We are who we are, out and out and proud.
This can may not look like much, but it's one of just 2 artifacts at the Smithsonian Institution closest to a pivotal moment in American history. It happened in June 1969 at a New York tavern called the Stonewall Inn. Mark Siegel was there. He was 18 and gay. Back then, his nightlife options were limited.
In 1969, gay people had 0 rights. In the state of New York, if you served a known homosexual, you would lose your liquor license.
It was also illegal to dress outside gender norms.
In the 1960s, I could have been arrested for wearing the jeans I'm wearing because they zip up the front, not the back or the side. So these are men's jeans. They actually are, but because I like men's clothes better, mostly.
The Stonewall Inn was one of few places that accepted LGBTQ people.
Didn't matter that the drinks were watered down. Didn't matter that the glasses were dirty. That's all we could expect in our life at that point.
But police often raided the bar.
I mean, the things you heard were, oh, they didn't make their payoff this week, so that's why the police are coming in. Or you'd hear, oh, it's just one, some election is coming up, so they have to show that they're taking the ferries in. Or, oh, they're having a bad night with their wife, so they want to hassle us. Those are the kind of things you heard.
On June 28, 1969, something snaps, and the kids fight back, igniting violent demonstrations over several days.
I think in that moment, so many things came across in all our heads. We already watched how women had organized. We already watched how the black community had organized. It was time for us to organize and fight back.
It wasn't the first gay rebellion against police harassment, but it did spark a new attitude and activism around gay rights.
Stonewall was that final match, in a way, to light that fire and say, we are done with this. They weren't going to go back into the closet. They weren't going to go back into that bar and play by the rules of the NYPD. They were going to go be out there.
While Stonewall marked a turning point, it wasn't the beginning of LGBTQ life in the US. For centuries, their stories have been hidden away.
Partly because people didn't want to be known back then. People often destroyed records, burned your papers, your letters, anything that referenced a gender-fluid identity.
Smithsonian curators are digging into their collections for evidence of lives long overlooked.
If your story is not told, then you're not important. History and objects are like umbilical cords. They're like a superhighway to the past. And to the future, to those who come after us, will want to know, am I the only one in the world who has ever, in all of history, felt like this? And no matter what you're feeling, the answer is no. But that's why you need to have people save stories so that you can find yourself.
Hidden stories of people daring to be themselves are now coming to light at the Smithsonian.
Come on, girls! Let's show them how we do it!
100 years before Stonewall, this costume was made for a gender-bending superstar. It was famously worn not by an actor, but by an actress, Charlotte Cushman, the Meryl Streep of her day.
She was the most famous American actress of the mid-19th century. Comedy, drama, female characters, male characters. She has a really broad repertoire.
Cushman became a star playing Romeo to her younger sister's Juliet, at a time when women often played male roles to accentuate their feminine anatomy.
When you're playing male roles like Romeo, the tights that extended below the breeches exposed women's legs, which was pretty rare, and it was seen as being risque. And so the performance was as much about sort of the titillating spectacle of going to see women's legs as it was about the actual acting.
But where she could, Cushman strove for authenticity and chose to hide her gender altogether. In 1857, she played another man, Cardinal Wolsey, in Shakespeare's Henry VIII.
Cushman has the costume designed in order to de-emphasize her body, right? You can't see the legs. She also has the robes cut very loosely so that it de-accentuates her bust.
Charlotte Cushman wears those, taking on a role that she couldn't take on in real life by making people forget that that's a woman in there. But it's an astounding performance.
Cushman's gender bending didn't stop when the curtain came down. She often dressed in men's riding jackets and pursued several sexual relationships with other women.
So she wasn't out in the way that we would talk about that term now, but she wasn't shy about going out in public with the people she had relationships with.
Today's concepts of being gay or lesbian didn't apply in the mid-19th century. In fact, these labels weren't even used.
Same-sex passion in that period is viewed as something that is, to some degree, normal. Although it's the sexual explicitness, that's the line that polite society doesn't want crossed.
Cushman was mindful of not crossing that line.
For instance, she told almost all of her lovers not to share her letters or to even burn them. So she was very careful about how she wanted to guard her sexual experiences and her relationships.
Women living with women, even as life partners, was acceptable. Society called it a Boston marriage.
In fact, that was viewed by most people in society as a very chaste and pure thing to do. And then what happened behind closed doors happened behind closed doors, and nobody quite knew.
Another artist of the era wanted to blast those doors open.
Walt Whitman is the first great American artist. He's the poet of emotions.
His masterpiece, Leaves of Grass, was labeled obscene for its outspoken and sensuous nature.
Whitman wanted it to be improper. He was standing outside of American society, and he was creating something completely revolutionary. The frontispiece for Leaves of Grass shows him very handsome with open-throated shirt. He's standing there with sort of hands on hips with the hat cocked back on his head. Like, yeah, you're coming at me? I'm Walt Whitman.
He was also not shy about sexuality and wove homoerotic themes into his poetry.
It's impossible to miss it, particularly in the Calamus poems, but also the 28 men nude bathing in Leaves of Grass.
But despite having male lovers, Whitman didn't identify as gay.
Walt Whitman, like Charlotte Cushman, lives in this period where homosexuality as an identity doesn't exist. He's expressing whatever his passionate feelings are, sort of regardless of what decorum and respectability might say.
Yet Whitman paid a price for bearing his soul. He never saw the commercial success that Cushman did. but his artistic legacy would far surpass hers.
He was able to define a new vision, a more inclusive vision of the United States in a way that no one had ever done before.
So you have the extraordinary situation where a gay man becomes the voice of American democracy precisely because he's outside of it.
Other cultures were more open to individuality. In 1886, Smithsonian anthropologist Matilda Stevenson invited Wewa, a Zuni artisan, to come to Washington, D.C.
Stevenson is introducing her as a Zuni priestess, as a somewhat exotic person to perform native culture within the capital in various ways.
Truth is, Wewa was not a priestess. In fact, Wewa was male-bodied with a female identity.
There's every indication that Stevenson, in the beginning, did not know that Wewa was a man. And Washington society accepted him as a woman.
Wewa charmed the Washington elite with Zuni culture and skill as a weaver. Being male-bodied was by all accounts inconsequential.
Within Washington society, there is no concept in those days of transgender, so it's not even an option at that point to have that kind of discussion. People were willing to stretch their understanding of someone because they're not of their culture.
Wewa donated this loom to the Museum of Natural History, where 2 Zuni guests have offered to shed light on Wewa's role in their culture.
It's just a different way of acting than your gender, of having not a gender bias, but just accepting who people are. And that was Tlahma.
Tlahma? The word Tlahma is referring to specifically a male that has female characteristics or a personality. And it's always been accepted in Zuni as something that is natural.
Wewa was also gifted with clay. Not only did they make ceremonial baskets like this one, they broke Zuni tradition by taking on the female task of pottery.
It was just a woman's role, the women's job to make pottery. It was bad luck to have men around when the women were firing the pots. But now it's changed. And now there's a lot of famous, well-known potters that are men. And I think it might have been Wewa is the reason why it changed.
This was a person that was just a gifted artist, and she's made a very big impact and contribution to the community.
So it sounds as though if Wewa is a role model today for Zunis, it's not just about gender, it's really as an artist.
And the sexual orientation and preference for Wewa was just secondary.
And I think that's one of the good traits of being a Zuni is that, you know, we're very open. We're not biased in how we want people to be.
Well, most indigenous people around the world have really different understandings of gender identity and sexuality than Judeo-Christian European traditions. Homosexual becomes a term around the 1890s forward, and it's a pathology. It's a term used to describe a disease or a mental illness.
In the 20th century, being different would become dangerous in new ways.
You're going to be marked as psychologically unfit, a pedophile, you know, someone who is a scar on society.
This police booking card from 1915 has been preserved at the National Museum of American History. Countless like it were issued across America for men who broke a very specific law.
Mr. Mooney was picked up for what would be in the vernacular called cruising at a railway station in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
The law called it sodomy.
You have this man being penalized for at least trying to find someone like himself.
Police could raid your home in the privacy of whatever you were doing and arrest you. Even if you were suspected, you could be arrested.
Mooney was convicted and sent to jail for 3 years.
It totally symbolizes the idea of criminalization of same-sex relationships.
Sodomy laws outlawed what were deemed to be unnatural sexual acts and would remain on the books in many states as late as 2003.
People were afraid of us. People stigmatized us. They arrested us, harassed us. We had to watch our backs all the time.
Those brave enough to pursue gay relationships through most of the 20th century did it in secret, leading invisible lives.
I'm reaching out. Well, I'm reaching now.
These are love letters addressed to a man by several different men during World War II.
Tell me your dreams, are you waiting for me? Show me your heart.
The Philip St. George letters tell the story of a man who seems to have been closeted, but was trying to pass as straight.
I'm reaching out for love.
They talk about how they're feeling in a way that men at that time were not allowed to do, certainly openly, and certainly if you were in the military.
In many ways, the war actually helped gay people feel less alone.
You do have men and women coming from all parts of the United States, and they're being thrown together in sometimes very close quarters, and they're finding out that, oh, wow, I am not the only one like this in the world.
And they start comparing notes. They form alliances. They have lots of sex. They feel empowered.
It was a liberating time for the gay community to accept and understand its identity.
Now, of course, the community was underground, and especially in the military, but this definitely sowed the seeds of let's get together and let's see how we can actually change society.
Still, few came out openly for fear of being court-martialed or worse. And back home, there were growing efforts to stamp out homosexuality altogether.
There were enough medical physicians who thought being gay was a medical condition that could be cured.
Throughout much of the 20th century, gay men and women were involuntarily committed to psychiatric facilities by their families in hopes of getting the gay out.
They used drugs. They put people into comas to alter their minds. They used electroconvulsive shock treatment to rewire the brain or short-circuit the brain.
Basically, this involved showing the gay man pictures of nude males and shocking him with a strong electric current.
Lobotomy was another brutal procedure intended for all sorts of mental disorders. This tool was used by Dr. Walter Freeman.
Freeman's technique was you go in behind the eye through the eye socket and you just wiggle it to disconnect the frontal lobe from the rest of the brain.
Typically, this removed any personal drive, but often left patients severely disabled. Of the thousands of lobotomies Freeman performed, roughly 40% were on homosexuals. These extreme methods were part of a larger effort to suppress LGBTQ people. And by the 1950s, a new movement set out to stop it. These magazines are from one of the earliest pro-gay organizations in America.
In some ways, the mantra was, we're going to fit in and then we'll be accepted. We're going to educate the American populace that this is not something abhorrent or out of the ordinary. We are members of society just like you.
Groups like the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis were founded in the 50s to establish a safe, underground culture for gays and lesbians.
What adults do willingly in private is their own affair. and their real main reason for existing was to serve as support groups and trying to push for some equal rights, but in a non-confrontational way.
It was called the homophile movement, meaning loving the same. And one of its most outspoken activists was Frank Kameny.
We're going to go out, we're going to march, we're going to be much more vocal, much more visible, and we're going to be who we are.
In 1957, Kameny, a Harvard-trained physicist, sued the US government when it fired him for being gay.
He was not successful, but he certainly did not lay down and just walk away like so many others. He was a little bit of a firebrand, or a lot of bit of a firebrand, actually.
Diversity doesn't have to imply threat.
He radicalizes himself.
Kameny took his fight to the White House in 1965.
He's doing this with his long-term activist partner, Barbara Giddings, and sort of proudly stating, I'm a gay man, I'm a lesbian woman, and I am demanding my rights.
Every American citizen has the right to be considered by his government on the basis of his own personal merits as an individual.
Kameny and Giddings took their pickets to Philadelphia on July 4th and demonstrated in front of Independence Hall annually for the next 4 years. Fellow Mattachine member Lily Vincennes filmed the event in 1968. Kameny would later use the simple phrase, "gay is good," to say that homosexuals were upright citizens like everyone else. They even dressed the part.
They thought that all women should look like housemakers of the 1950s, and all men should look like the guys who work on Madison Avenue with suit and ties.
We're just going to march, and we're going to have our placards, and we're going to show you that, oh my gosh, you know, they look just like my neighbor next door.
But their polite request for equal rights was drowned out as the 1960s became more politically charged.
There was this tension across the country to be more visible, more active, more confrontational.
The younger generation was tired of playing by the rules.
We are done with this. You know what? We're going to live our lives.
It was time for us to fight back.
Down in Greenwich Village, the New York night is, well, it's different.
Mark Siegel was 18 when he moved away from his family in 1969 and came to Greenwich Village, a well-known bohemian district in New York City.
When I was 18 years old, I knew I was gay, but I didn't even know what the right word for it was.
Like many other gay runaways, Mark
C
landed on
_
Christopher
Zirkley
Street
just subscribed
and hung out in Christopher Park.
And this became my home. Our friends here were everybody you can imagine. We just accepted each other and were proud to be with each other because we were ourselves. And that was one of my hangouts, Stonewall. I would usually go to the end of the bar, and that's where my friends, street kids, drag queens, would hang out.
Among the regulars were Marcia Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Both Johnson and Rivera worked the streets and performed for money. And like most Stonewall customers, they were regularly harassed by the police.
We were second, third, fourth class citizens, but this place, allowed us to be here. We could be arrested out on the street, so this was safe.
On June 28, 1969, Mark had been in New York just 6 weeks.
So that night, I was in the bar, and all of a sudden, the lights started flickering on and off. I looked over the person next to me, I said, "What's going on?" And they were casual. They said, "Oh, just another raid." That set off alarm bells inside me. I was nervous as hell. And the police had no use for me. They're going after the drag queens. They're throwing insults around. But me, they just carded me and let me out. And I was glad to get out of the bar.
When Mark got outside, a small crowd was gathered around the entrance.
People would start applauding when someone got out. People started saying things to the police as the door would open. And the most vocal and loudest were the drag queens. They had nothing to lose.
Stand up stronger.
Everything society could take away from you had already taken away from them. This was their home. Somebody threw something at the door. Ruckus started. Police came out of the door chasing somebody. Then they went inside because they felt endangered. The police barricaded themselves inside the bar. Basically, all hell broke loose.
By the time police reinforcements arrived, Christopher Street had filled with several hundred people.
Police came out. People dispersed. People ran down that street. They ran up various other streets, Bleecker Street, Gay Street. They just were all over here. It was one of the greatest nights in the history for gay people.
By 4 a.m., the riot squad finally dispersed the crowds. But for Mark and his friends, the rebellion had just begun.
Marty Robinson came up to me, hands me a piece of chalk, at which point he says, go up and down the street and write on the walls and the street, tomorrow night, Stonewall. Tomorrow night, Stonewall. And we did that all the way down to Silver Dollar Restaurant, all the way up to Greenwich Avenue.
Word spread quickly, and the following night, thousands filled the area. The uprising continued over the next few days, often turning violent as demonstrators clashed with police and declared their independence.
Never let society define us ever again. We are who we are, out loud and proud. We were going to be in your face. We were going to demand rights. And standing right here at one of those moments, in my head somewhere, I said, this is what I want to do the rest of my life.
Within weeks, Mark, Marsha Johnson, and other activists formed the Gay Liberation Front, uniting gay men, lesbians, and transgender people in the fight against oppression and inequality.
First thing we did was to identify ourselves. We were no longer homosexuals. That was a clinical term, and we didn't relate to that.
My mother knows I'm gay. My father lives in Los Angeles and does not know I'm gay. And I'm proud of it. Right on, right.
That was a point of no return in the sense of accepting themselves and being out there. And whether my family accepts me or not, this is important to me now. I want to be a full American citizen.
And to celebrate their independence, they chose the first anniversary of the Stonewall riots to stage the Christopher Street Gay Liberation Day Parade.
We're going to dare to be ourselves, really be out there. We're going to have a parade right down one of the most famous avenues in New York City.
On June 28th, 1970, thousands marched from Christopher Street up 6th Avenue, all the way to Central Park.
Gay people actually leaving the village and walking where good, upright citizens live and work every day right across Manhattan.
Simultaneous marches were held in Chicago, LA, and San Francisco. They were the first gay pride marches that have been held annually in cities across the US ever since. Mark's original sticker and donation can now live at the Smithsonian.
That little sticker, which was the most we could afford to promote that first gay pride, 1970, 1 year after Stonewall, was a statement unto itself.
While many were demanding visibility and acceptance within mainstream culture, some began rejecting the entire system.
They're starting their own groups that are women-only spaces. They're questioning patriarchy, they're questioning feminism, they're questioning religion.
Women-only communes like the Furies adopted a feminist version of Wicca, a neo-pagan religion.
Separatist Wiccan groups worship the goddess or Mother Earth, try to revive old religious practices that don't include the power of men.
While feminist Wiccan practices gained popularity through the 70s and early 80s, the larger LGBTQ movement continued to grow. In 1979, just 10 years after Stonewall, more than 50,000 people marched on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. The future was looking brighter until a mysterious killer began taking gay lives. In the early 1980s, doctors began reporting strange symptoms in gay male patients.
1981, we began to hear about the first cases of what was being called the gay cancer.
Men's immune systems were failing catastrophically.
In the initial stages, your life was over within a few weeks.
No one could identify the source of the disease.
If it is contagious, which we don't know really, but if it is a contagious agent, then it is transmitted by very, very close personal contact.
And some hospitals were refusing to take patients. Some funeral homes wouldn't take the bodies. They would be left in alleyways.
As panic mounted, the government did little for research efforts.
Some religious people said, you know, this is God's plague on those people. God is striking you down.
2 years would pass before they discovered the virus and gave it a name: HIV. By that time, more than 3,000 had died.
At one point, you're just going to, every weekend was a funeral. And it angers you because nothing was being done.
Demonstrators demanded that more be done to find a cure. In October 1987, activists descended on Washington, D.C. to honor those who died of AIDS, with what would become the largest traveling memorial in the world.
The AIDS quilt is a unique and interesting phenomenon.
Nearly 2,000 panels with the names of the dead were laid out on the National Mall, covering a space larger than a football field.
They had boxes of tissues because everyone was crying. I found the names of some of my friends. We have a quilt panel from Roger Lyons, who testified in Congress saying famously, "Don't let my epitaph be I died of red tape," because Congress wasn't ponying up, wasn't paying attention, didn't care.
The quilt continued to grow, toured other cities, but it always returned to Washington with a clear message.
Let us show you the devastation. This is how large it has grown. And this is but a mere microcosm of how many people have passed.
The AIDS epidemic was not exclusive to the gay community, and HIV continues to claim lives around the world. But the AIDS crisis hit closer to home than mainstream America expected. Not only were family members dying, so were popular celebrities.
One of the hallmarks of that was when Rock Hudson died. Here was the ultimate American male. Big, brawny, deep voice. Always in a movie with some really great-looking actress. And lo and behold, Rock Hudson was gay. Yes, indeed, even the person that you think could possibly no way in the world be gay is gay.
As the impact of the AIDS crisis rippled out, Broadway hits like Rent and Torch Song Trilogy exposed millions of Americans to sympathetic gay characters.
Representation really matters. The more you see characters of different backgrounds, the more you understand that they are your neighbors, that you share the same concerns, and this is really what's important about entertainment.
Then, in 1998, television brought gay lead characters into American homes.
One sweet. Was that Danny?
Yeah. Jealous?
Honey, I don't need your man. I got George Clooney.
Sorry, babe. He doesn't bat for your team.
Well, he hasn't seen me pitch.
Will and Grace is really unique because it took this idea of a normal sitcom of people living in a city and they could be your neighbors and added gay characters to the mix.
That's just a straight guy's way of thinking that you and I could ever be a couple.
Okay, first of all, Will should only be so lucky. Okay, so let's just clear that right up.
The producers of Will and Grace were gracious enough to bring us some of the objects from the show's production. So we have the pilot script for the show, so you can see the evolution of the script as they wrote it out.
My one-night stand on Fire Island.
Latin things!
Good. And a cane. A railing.
Ah! Oh, come on, give me another clue!
Each other.
Things that you lean on!
Not only did America get to see us, they got to laugh with us.
They just kind of normalized being gay and made it just really popular and fun.
Though not the first to introduce gay characters on TV, Will and Grace would win 18 Emmy Awards over 8 seasons and have a lasting impact on the LGBTQ community.
Joe Biden said in 2012 when he came out for gay marriage that Will and Grace had done more to advance this cause than anything else.
But the show's reach wasn't strong enough to eliminate hatred. Just 2 weeks after Will and Grace made its debut, a horrifying event sparked national outrage.
Matthew Shepard is murdered in a brutal hate crime in Wyoming. You think things are going well, and then something like that happens.
On October 7th, 1998, Matthew Shepard, a gay 21-year-old student, was found tied to a split-rail fence in a prairie outside the town where he went to college. He had been beaten savagely with a pistol.
He's murdered by 2 young men about his age who thought they wanted to rob him, pretended to be gay.
Shepard's murder was widely condemned as a brutal hate crime against gays. Within months, his parents would launch the Matthew Shepard Foundation.
We decided to set up this foundation in Matt's name to use this money in a way to help younger LGBT folks have a better, safer life.
Their work would help pass the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act,
capacity to love,
signed by President Obama in 2009.
I'm pretty sure Matt would be pretty astounded that his story is the one that people are using to define change for the LGBT community.
20 years after his murder, Matthew Shepard's parents donated many of his belongings to the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History.
Even though he's become this mythic icon, he's much more than how he was murdered.
It's the difference between Matthew and Matt.
Matthew is someone who's considered maybe even a martyr to some people. Matt is just a kid.
The lips really caught my eye.
I received those for a Valentine's gift from Matt. It was about 7, probably. And after that day, I put it in his lunch when he would go to school. So he'd have a kiss for me at lunch.
Oh, and he never lost it.
No, he never lost it. One of the few things he never lost.
He was just a kid. Like other kids, he liked Superman. He had a dog. He liked theater. He liked politics. He was so familiar the way all kids are.
We do not consider Matt to be our gay son. We do consider him to be our son who happened to be gay. Just like he happened to have blue eyes, he happened to have blonde hair.
What really matters is who you are on the inside, your core self. Are you a good citizen? Are you a kind person?
This ring, it's one of those intense objects that capture a side of somebody. Did you know he did this?
I did not know. This really, to me, exemplifies the hope he had for the future. He was very concerned that as a gay man, he might not ever be able to share his life with someone in the legal sense. So to me, this represents hope.
He was a pretty optimistic kid.
Dreamed of a happy ever after.
Yeah. To think about his aspiration, his hope, his wanting to fall in love and have a family, be married, meet someone, to have a life ahead of him are all really packed into that ring.
Like many before him, Matt Shepard paid a heavy price for being himself.
And Peggy's the one who said it, God hates.
And his death sparked such a hateful reaction from anti-gay groups that his parents didn't feel safe burying his ashes in a marked grave.
We were going to scatter him in Wyoming, but his brother wanted him someplace where he could visit. So we just kept him in Casper with us.
But Matt would eventually find peace in a place beyond their wildest dreams. And years later, his legacy would reverberate in unexpected places. In 2013, NBA player Jason Collins dropped a bombshell on America's #1 sports magazine. In the middle of his playing career.
There's a tremendous amount of risk because Jason Collins could not have been picked up by another team. He was a free agent. He didn't have the protections that most NBA players who are under contract have.
The 34-year-old Collins had already played 12 seasons. Many said his career was finished, until an old friend reached out.
The coach of the Brooklyn Nets at that time was his former teammate, Jason Kidd.
On Kidd's advice, the Nets signed Collins in 2014. It would be his final season with the NBA. But his first playing as an openly gay man. Number 98 could finally be himself, sharing the meaning of his uniform that had been hidden for years.
It's when he joined the Boston Celtics in 2012 that he decided to wear the number 98 because it represents the year 1998, the year that Matthew Shepard was killed in Wyoming because he was a gay man.
As a final gesture of support, Collins' teammates signed his jersey when he retired. Today, Collins works for NBA Cares, a global community outreach initiative that helps younger athletes accept their sexuality.
Each person that speaks up and lives an authentic life and speaks, their truth, it'll make it easier for the next person.
Someone like Jason Collins, who comes out, can become not only an inspiration for a lot of the other queer people who play sports, but also to help push manhood to be less constricting for all men.
Jason Collins risked his career going public. Gene Robinson risked his life. When he became the first openly gay bishop in the Episcopal Church in 2003.
While I could be, reasonably anonymous gay priest in New Hampshire, people around the world knew that I was being elected a bishop for the whole church, and they were horrified by that.
Hate mail and death threats poured into his office, trying to prevent his consecration. But the New Hampshire diocese moved forward under incredibly tight security.
I was told that we had sharpshooters on the roof, we had bomb-sniffing dogs, we had policemen on horses, and I had to wear a bulletproof vest. Well, I didn't have to. But I didn't want to die. I wasn't interested in being a martyr. I just wanted to be a bishop, right?
My brother, the people have chosen you and have affirmed their trust in you by acclaiming your election.
If there was an attack, an armed bodyguard would rush Robinson to a room where 3 bishops and a photographer would be waiting.
So that they could lay hands on me, make me a bishop, and we'd have a photograph to prove it. And the consecration itself wouldn't be foiled, assuming I wasn't dead.
My brothers and sisters in Christ, greet your new bishop coadjutor.
Wonderfully, none of that happened, and here I am.
Bishop Robinson has agreed to donate some of his personal objects to the Smithsonian as part of the ongoing collection for LGBTQ history.
Hi, Catherine. How are you? Come on in. So it's so great to have you here finally.
Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough.
I've actually assembled some stuff for you to look at. Take your stuff out and just throw it on the chair there.
What we got?
These were the vestments that I had made for my consecration. I'll just show them to you a little bit here.
You had to wear a flak jacket.
Yeah, so
right?
I actually wore a bulletproof vest under these vestments.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Though Robinson survived his consecration, for years after, he and his partner received death threats.
This one has got a lot of obscenity at the beginning,
Oh
but
my God, how can you read that?
Yeah. You SOB, still spreading AIDS, that's the only thing you're good for. More obscenity. This one wins the most creative award for hate mail. I mean, it's like out of a 1940s grade B movie, right? Where the murderer cuts...
Ransom note or something.
I have a bullet for each of your heads when you least expect it, and that's a picture of me and Mark taken from the internet. One of the closest times I came to being killed was in 2009. We get a call from the Vermont State Police, and they say, Bishop Robinson, we've just arrested a man here, and he had a sawed-off shotgun and tons of ammunition. And we're pretty sure he was on his way to your house to ring your doorbell and blow your head off.
There was also hope and support.
The supportive ones really nourished me. I mean, I would get emails and notes and letters from, you know, some teenager in Podunk, Iowa, saying, it's the first time I've ever seen anybody put their sexuality together with their spirituality. This gives me hope about my life, which of course is why I was doing all this, right? Was for the next generation of
It saves lives.
people. Yeah,
It
I think
does,
so. I think so. So it was totally worth it.
Robinson received many tokens of love and support, including a cross made from gold objects that his parishioners donated personally.
Being able to document your journey and all of the joys and the suffering and all that you've gone through so that we can all learn. I'm so grateful to you that you trust us to be able to be good stewards. So thank you.
It's my great honor. Thanks.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
In October 2018, Gene Robinson helped Matt Shepard's parents finally lay their son to rest at Washington's National Cathedral.
You are safe now. Oh, yeah. And Matt, welcome home. Those were not just words for Matt. They were words for all of us. So for the Smithsonian to join in that says in a loud way, we're here, in a way that was denied us for so long. And so it's just a great honor to be invited to donate this stuff, and they can have anything they want.
Come close and look me in the eye.
This is a story about acceptance and about identity and having your place in this national narrative.
LGBTQ plus identity has been incubating for hundreds of years. So there's no one history, never will be.
I think it's time we take control.
But the LGBTQ experience is tightly woven into the fabric of American history. And as it changes with the times, Smithsonian collections reveal fascinating clues to often hidden lives.
That's what this institution does well. It makes people realize, no matter who they are, that they belong to America.
It's really important that we preserve these materials.
It comes down to respect. Can you be who you are and be safe?
It's all about enlightenment and just making this tapestry of American history that much fuller, brighter. It is becoming easier to say, this is who I am.
Sigurli Swagreik. So that was Beyond Stonewall. It was only an hour long, and it was probably could have been so much longer and include so much more content. But at some point, we have to draw the line somewhere as far as how much, because unless you're doing a whole series. Um, there's only so much that you can fit into one documentary, and but I think it was well done for what it was, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Now we do have one more documentary to share. It's called From Earth to Sky, and it kind of covers the exploring the works of a couple of really notable indigenous architects and their influence on some of the architecture that we see today here on Turtle Island. And I think that from the little glimpse that I got, again, I haven't watched it all, so it's going to be kind of a thing for me as well. But what I'd like to do in the meantime, though, is give you a moment to refresh your drinks or grab a snack if you like. So Um, I'm going to play two songs. The first song I think kind of fits into what we just watched. It's called Through the Eyes of a Child, and it's a collaboration that I did with another streamer named Composy. Now, if you don't know who Composy is, you should certainly give her a follow and check out her stream. Let me just put this in. I guess it's not going to show the clip because of my screen here. That's okay. I'll try it again. So, Composi is so sweet and all-inclusive. She's an ally to the LGBTQ community, to the Indigenous community, to a lot of um, marginalized communities. And Mr. Audio Propagations, welcome in. Sigoli, nice to see you. You're just catching us right between two documentaries. Now, I will post this VOD up after the stream, so if anyone wants to see the first one, who may have missed it, or if you just missed part of it, or you want to see just rewatch it, then we'll have that available for as long as Twitch allows us to keep it up there. So the first one that we just watched was called Beyond Stonewall, Exploring LGBT History Through the Smithsonian Archives. And it was really, I think, well done. And it was only an hour long, so it's not like a a lot of time. But if you are interested, it will be again posted after the stream. The next one, again, we're going to see is one called From Earth to Sky, and it's going to show the influence that indigenous architects have had on the architecture that we may see in some places today, and it'll show you some examples. From what I've seen, looks really, really cool, the architecture. But again, before we get to that, I'm going to share two songs. The first song is one called "Through the Eyes of a Child." Now, "Through the Eyes of a Child" was inspired by the death of a 16-year-old student who was attacked at school in Oklahoma and ended up dying the day after they were attacked. Now, from what I understand, um, the coroner's report states that the Nex Benedict, who is the student, did not die from the injuries from the physical altercation that they had at school. That being said, many people are um, kind of arguing the side that all, even if they did not, first of all, they could not they could not conclusively say that it did not feed into the Nexus death. So there are still questions as to how much of an effect that had on their death. But at the same time, the other argument is that the investigation into the school board that they controlled the school that they were involved in or had to go to. Um, Next was harassed and bullied for over a year prior to their death. And so the question is, what did the school board do about the the bullying and the harassment? Because that in itself has fed into um, what the coroner is reporting as the cause of death being a suicide by a mix of narcotics. So, if that were the case, then the question is, why did Nex feel the need to take the narcotics at the level in the mix that they did? And some of that goes to the psychological trauma that they've had to deal with for over a year of bullying and harassment from fellow students, with the school board taking no action. Um, so there's still some talk about that case, and it has caused President Biden to come out and talk about the importance of acceptance. And I don't know what he's actually going to do about it, if anything, but he has at least put out the nice words, if you will. But we obviously have to keep pushing for human rights, and human rights meaning everyone's rights, whether you are Jewish, whether you're black, whether you're um, trans. So this death kind of triggered me to question, where does this hatred and racism come from? Because we're not innately born with it. We are not coming out of our mother's wombs saying, I don't like black people. I don't like trans people. I don't like any, we just, it's not in us instinctually. It's something that we are learning. And that means that we are a product of our environment. So if we live in a racist, hateful environment, that's the way we're going to grow up. And so we really need to change the attitudes of adults in order to change the attitudes of children. And so this song, which I collabed with Composy on, is called "Through the Eyes of a Child," is exactly kind of that. It's us taking a moment to reflect on, what do children see, and do we see things in the same way, or can we see things in the same way? So this is a lyric video that we did for the recording. So I'm going to play that, and then right after that, I'm going to also play my rendition of "The Peaceful Warrior," which I said I would do for one of our chatters that were in here yesterday. So I'm going to get my mug off the screen here, and then we'll get started with the first song, which really, again, it fits right into the documentary that we just watched. So I hope you enjoy this. This is called "Through the Eyes of a Child."
looking through the eyes of a child, and things look wild. See, I just don't understand. What are we doing to this land? What are we doing to each other, to our sisters and our brothers? Can someone please explain so this all makes sense to my brain? Because I'm grown to see what I see, and what I see is what I'll read. Why are we being so unkind? Hatred is just twisting my mind. All the big people fighting, the little people frightened, fighting in the house and fighting on the news. Woke up in the morning, and mama's got a bruise. Looking through the eyes of a child, things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child, things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child, things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child, things look wild.
Looking through the eyes of a child, things are looking wild.
I'm looking through the eyes of a child, and things look wild. Something doesn't seem right, doesn't sit well. Is this supposed to be normal? Someone do tell. From homicide to genocide to how do we hide all the bodies of the people who have died? And what if I'm gay? What if I'm black? What if I'm a Jew? What about that? And if I'm trans, do I deserve death? Do you call me names under your breath? When does it stop? When does it end? When do you decide to be my friend? When do we put down our guns, put down our knives? When do we start caring about lives? Could be someone close or could be a stranger. Why should there ever be a threat of danger? Because the way I see it, we're all the same. The only difference between us might be our name. Now I know you've heard this before. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. So drop that blade, stop keeping score. Just let out the love and let the peace soar. I'm looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild, things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild. Looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild. Things look wild. I'm looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild. Things look wild. Looking through the eyes of a child. Things look wild. Things look wild. Through the eyes of a child. Through the eyes of a child. My name's Galahunde. My name is Galahunde. My name's Galahunde, and I'm a war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. So what am I doing here? What do I really want to say? Is that this world has got to change its way. See, I'm going to fight for the red, white, yellow, and black. I'm going to fight for the ones who can't fight back. And I'm talking about all the preachers, from the water to the skies. I'm talking about all the issues, from the truth to the lies. And I'm gonna make my stand with a paper and a pen. You wanna argue that? Go back to bed again. Cause you're never gonna win against what I stand for. So sit down, shut up, and listen as I give you my grand tour. See, I'm going to target the corruption in the government. I'm going to target the poison in our environment. I'm going to target the injustices to the people. I'm going to hit every target, or I won't keep still. See, I'm going to battle the battle of the battles. I'm going to shake up the cage until it rattles. You're never going to get rid of me. Not until the problems of the world are cut at the knee. You know what I'm saying? Let me get this out one more time, so crystal clear is the message in my rhyme. I said my name is Galahundi, number war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. I'm going to fight for the red, white, yellow, and black. I'm going to fight for the ones who can't fight back. So let's keep passing around our information, so we can improve this planet through education. Somebody's got to make the people aware. Someone's got to make everybody care. So pass that message on, if you dare. And whether it's mine or yours, we all got to share. Because there's more power in one man's voice than all the weapons of military choice. Now you put your voice with my voice, we can shout out loud that we belong to the human race, and that we are proud. You don't have to be a master of science to see that we need to create a worldwide alliance in order to approach the corporations that's asking people for their insubordinations. When they bring up what's happening to our waters and the diseases spread to our slaughters. And what about the government officials who stand behind them? Their backdoor handshakes and verbal deals that bind them. We have seen how the world can be devastated through the actions of men with minds of hatred. Look at Hitler, Charlie Manson, and even Osama. These are the men who've caused us trauma. I said these are the men who've caused us trauma. Then we have cops with hookers in the backseats. We have punk-ass teens knifing each other in the streets. We have drug dealers hooking up kids with crack. Why, there's a lot of shit in this world that's just whack. We have people who stand up for the rights and get shot down. Well, you better batten down the hatches. Cause we heading into the next round. Because there's no getting to a war without losses. Lenin, King, Gandhi, they're all on symbolic crosses. Now the speakers of the past are going to inspire the speakers of the future. We're gonna try to heal this world with a metaphorical suture. I said my name's Galahundi, and I'm a war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. But I won't be able to move this world all alone. So just remember that this is also your home. So if I put my voice with your voice and we shout out together, people are gonna hear us. And things are gonna get better. Done it. All my relations. Peace. All my relations. Done it. Peace. All of my relations.
Okay, so that was the two songs that I had promised that I would play, and so those are done and done. Now we're going to get to our final documentary here next. So give me a moment. Let me get this set up. Now the next one we're seeing here. Again, is it's called From Earth to Sky. It's a TVO original, and it's exploring the work of accomplished Indigenous architects including a world-renowned Anishinaabe architect named Douglas Cardinal. And it'll show you some samples of their work, and I'm sure that you'll definitely um, just be in awe of some of the work he's done. So I hope that you will enjoy this. And Scissorman, welcome in. And of course, Scuba, good to see you. And so it's documentary day, and so we watched one already about the history of the LGBTQ community through the Smithsonian Archives, which again, this VOD will be posted up after the stream. So if anyone missed the first one or just want to rewatch it, it will be available for as long as Twitch allows me to keep it up. So in the meantime, let's get to our next one. Again, from Earth to Sky, and this is in relation to our Indigenous architects. So let's go.
I remember the vision of the elders to love the rivers and the forests and the mountain streams, and to love the clear waters and the wind that blows across our brow. To love as we love. I felt that young Indigenous architects, if they spoke from the heart, it would show another way of looking at the world. To share that loving and caring for the land so that we all will have a future together. My name is Douglas Cardinal. My father comes from the Blackfoot Nation. My father would take me hunting, and I had a trap line with him, and so we lived totally off the land as a family back then. The local priest told my mother that if she brought up her children Catholic, maybe the Creator would absolve her from her sinful life. I was at a residential school there from 7 to about 15. The most difficult thing was to be away from my mom and dad. It was my mother who told me that she felt that I would be an architect. So I applied and I was accepted at UBC. I was told at UBC that it would be impossible for me to be an architect. I could see the way Canada treated First Nations people. So I just pointed my car south, and I ended up at the School of Frank Lloyd Wright, and I met Frank Lloyd Wright.
And you became Canada's first Indigenous architect.
I guess I never looked at it that way because I was on my own trip, and my father always taught me that anything is possible. You put your mind to it. The first major building was a church that I did in Red Deer, Alberta. It was very important for me to do that church because I really had issues with the church. That laid the foundation for my whole career. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he wanted to enshrine the rights in the Constitution, the art in the gallery, and the cultures of Canada in the museum. I was chosen for the museum, symbol of land and water and people entwined in the architecture. Because what I wanted to say was, we came from nature and we're part of nature. That's what I wanted to express in the building as a sculptural work of art. I went to the elders and I asked if we could have a ceremony together so that I could get a vision of the project from them. Because they said, you have to understand that a lot of our sacred objects are in the museum, but they'll be returned to us someday. The elders wanted me to build it strong, build it of stone, and have it be that it would last even longer than Parliament, so that people will be reminded that we were here right from the very beginning. The elders told me that I had a job to do. When an architect gets that opportunity?
It's important that when we call these spirits in to be with us and help us, as they are here now with us, that when we're done asking for their help, that we let them go.
What I've found in working with the Indigenous communities is that even though they're dealing with the worst possible conditions that are imposed on them, there's this feeling that things should be done in a loving and caring way.
Without fracking, without drilling, can we tap into that?
All life deserves to be respected. And so I start off with each project with a vision session where the elders of the community, the young people all come together. And then my job is to bring their vision into reality. It's almost not a profession, it's a mission. When I was thinking of the building, it's more like a Thunderbird because the rocks, the people call them Thunderbird eggs. Thunderbird. And now the challenge is how to build it and engineer it. Indigenous architecture, for me, it's hard to define. I look at my architecture as organic architecture. The Indigenous teachings can be the foundation for replanning and redesigning our cities. And I think that society is ready. Young people should follow the teachings of their elders to fulfill their dreams. If they want to be architects and make a difference in their communities and society as a whole, they have that right and that responsibility. I'm here, I'm 86, and I went through a lot, and I'm still going through a lot. I still love producing buildings and still love taking any challenge that people throw at me. I don't feel confined even to this country. My address is like planet Earth. Douglas Cardinal, planet Earth.
Nape Chante Washte Cheus Babe. I'm a member of the Oglala Lakota Nation from Pine Ridge, South Dakota. I was the first Indigenous woman architect in America. Our tribal projects usually have a story that's related to either the tribe or the function of the building or what the people need from the project. At Pahasinte, Oahuia, Porcupine School, our main concept, our main idea came from the children. We asked them to draw and to write stories on what they wanted in their ideal school. They wanted it to be like a house. They wanted it to feel safe, like a sanctuary. So that really became our vision for the building. We wanted it to be an idealized house. For a lot of these children, this was the only place where they would get a hot meal during the day. This is the place that they came to escape really bad situations at home. They really needed their school to be a safe place for them. So you can see how much natural light comes in from the north, and it's north light, so there's not a lot of glare, and it's just a nice filtered light coming into the space. Showcases the star quilt pattern on the floor.
It's like a circle of honor because of what that star quilt represents, with honoring, memorials. It's always in a circle when we present.
I've been to schools all over the United States, reservation schools, and this is by far one of the ones that I've seen that really captures the culture. In my language, it's called the Tioshbae, which is the extended family, is everything. Everything you do as an individual is for the Tioshbae, is for the family. It makes me feel proud that this building is so important to this community and they're all appreciative of it. That, to me, is kind of the heart of what it means for me to be a Lakota person. One of the things that I kind of struggled with when I was in high school, when I was trying to decide if I really wanted to be an architect or not, because I wanted to help my community in some way, and the most obvious way to do that would have been medicine. And I had a lot of guidance counselors talking to me about going to medicine, and so it makes me happy to know that I can, I still pursued my dream of being an architect and found a way to come back and help my community. Wounded Knee has a significance with my tribe in terms of being a sacred site, a site where our people have experienced, I think, a lot of trauma. In the history books and on the plaque, it was called the Battle of Wounded Knee. It took years and years and years for that to be reclassified as a massacre. You're a descendant, right?
Oh yeah, my Grandpa Ed's mother, she was running into the hills and got shot. So
she survived.
But she survived, yes.
The Lakota were very nomadic. That might have led to people thinking they could easily move us because we could live anywhere. So the concept of this is that we were going to go into the ground and we were going to inhabit this earth, claim it almost like a spear. This is where we are. This is our traditional home ground. The actual interpretive center is underneath the ground. Lakotas have 7 values that we try to live by, and I was never like sat down and said, okay, here's our 7 values, but it was something that was part of our daily life. Looking back, I can see that had a big influence on how I view what I do as an architect. Especially as an architect working with Native people, I really look at it as I'm just a piece of the puzzle. That was my grandma's house. And this is my mom and dad's house here.
Hi, sis.
How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Both my parents are Lakota, and they were both raised on the reservation. Lunch lady. Where I grew up, which was in Aberdeen, which is a non-tribal town, Pine Ridge and Porcupine, it was walking in both worlds. My dad wanted to be an architect. He thought about it all growing up, and that was what he was going to do. And he went to his guidance counselor on the reservation, and the guidance counselor said, "You can't do that." Was it Grandpa Toby? Now, did he want to be an architect, or was it just something he saw for you guys?
He used to say that, you know, as the time's coming when our people are going to need different kinds of professions. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need architects. So I'm glad that has happened.
Morning.
Good morning.
As you know or may not know, I'm going for a couple days, and then next week, going to be gone for the big trip. We have certain clients who don't want to see me. They would rather deal with my partner, who is a white male. For as many clients who love the fact that we're a Native American-owned firm, we have an equal number of clients who, don't like it. Finding out that I'm the first Indigenous woman architect in America was kind of a surprise to me. I feel like it's a little bit late in the game for me to be the first. I have, several buildings now, all over the United States that I'm very proud of, but for me, the legacy that I want to leave is inspiring Indian youth to pursue architecture. That's kind of one of the big responsibilities I have.
I was born and raised at Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve in southwestern Ontario. Being Indigenous to me means mostly a value system. A system that understands the gifts that Mother Earth has to offer, the timelessness of the generations. There's a respect for the things that have come before us. And there's an optimism about the things that are ahead of us. And it's about working with nature, working in alignment with all of the natural forces that are around us.
The wigwam thing, if we can accentuate those two, go back for a second. If we can accentuate those two center poles, I think that would be good. Because that's what we've tried to incorporate, so you can kind of get just a glimpse of that one there.
Me making the decision to become an architect was really just a happy accident, right? There were no role models back then. At least none that I knew of. And it wasn't like you could, you know, go on Google and type in Indigenous architect and see what would come up. Going to university, we were taught modernism and constructivism and postmodernism. There really wasn't anything that was more Indigenous based. There were a lot of precedents that were out there, but they really weren't embraced by the architectural community. I think it's changing now where you're seeing firms recognized for work that's really more ingrained with community traditions, and it's more about kind of working with the people of a certain area to develop an architecture that has some connections with some of their, you know, historic precedents. It's more land-based. It's more grounded in values like sustainability and stewardship of the land. It's really kind of honoring the history and trying to incorporate some of those values into contemporary structures.
And one of the things that we wanted to do is kind of even out the foundation here. So as opposed to it popping in here, it's now going straight across.
Yeah, I went with those guys. Yeah.
We've been working on the Anishinaabe Discovery Center, kind of like a library and archive. It's in Sault Ste. Marie, which is at the confluence of the Great Lakes. There's stories that go back for centuries about that area being, you know, a real kind of significant meeting place.
It'll be nice to actually see some concrete in the ground.
Yeah, well, there's a fair amount that's done. They've got the foundations completed for the majority of the building, and then majority of it is up to 915 above grade.
So they were able to achieve that curve and the ICF that we were looking for?
Curve is great. All that's in, looks really good.
One of the main administration buildings of Algoma University is the former Shingwak School. So we're kind of right across the road from that.
It's interesting how this place has kind of survived and what it's morphed into over the years.
But the reuse of the building, making it something new.
Yeah.
No, I always laugh when you tell the story about how most of the residential school survivors either want the building burned down,
yeah,
or they want it saved to be changed.
I was always a big fan of blowing them up. To have something plunked down that's so foreign, right?
3 stories,
right?
Steeple
Can
on
you
it.
imagine what the kids must have felt like coming from their small communities and having to be accommodated here? You know,
a monster.
A monstrous kind of building, eh?
Totally. Architecture of intimidation.
That's going to create an interesting little dialogue between those two structures.
Yeah.
think the building is going to become a symbol for the resilience of a lot of those community members from that area. They went to that school, you know, they were beaten down, but to see something that's new, that's contemporary, but that still has some of those ties to the past, I think it will kind of become, you know, a symbol of their survival.
Hubert, this is my boss, Brian Porter.
Brian, nice to meet you.
Hubert's the new site super.
Some of the staff, you know, they had looked at the original design, and they came back with a list of things when it did get funded that they wanted us to add into the design. You know, so we incorporated more classroom space. So I think it'll become a lot more engaging now, more mixed use. I think rather than just being sort of a static archive, I think it'll be more something that the university is going to use on a daily basis, which will be nice. And this area here, this gallery space, it's going to be something that, you know, traveling exhibits, you know, we want to make sure there's space to come in. And there really, to my knowledge, there isn't any Indigenous institution in Canada that has a facility like this. So I think this can become national caliber attraction for those kind of sensitive documents.
So if I wanted to think about my legacy, I think my legacy would be, you know, he was a guy that he managed to get stuff built in a lot of First Nation communities across Canada, some of which, you know, are real strong representations of their traditional culture and their traditional values. So I think that's the way that, you know, that I would kind of hope to be remembered. You know, is it that he didn't talk about it, he actually went out and got it done.
Originally from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, which is in the subarctic. But I've made a career of architecture in Vancouver. I'm not so much a person that is firmly connected to any reserve or community. I'm more as someone who's brought up with an Indigenous mother who's made me aware of my cultural connections.
That's very cool. I even used to know how to do beadwork at one time. I used to sit there with my mom and bead flowers and things like that.
Really?
And moose tufting as well.
So I was the first one of my family to get a university degree and to kind of break ground in that direction. I graduated with honors, top of my class. I consider myself somewhat of an artist. I have a great interest in culture as well as technological innovation and doing interesting architecture. Compared to other First Nations or Aboriginal architects, I do tend to be more of a tectonic architect. I like to look at how things come together in details as well as molding the space, because I think it's in the details and the expression of those details that you create this sort of spiritual space. Up in Whistler, we designed the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center. Instead of competing over that territory and fighting over it, the two nations signed a protocol agreement to work together. It takes in the view of the valley, and that was an important part of the design in the sense that this is to be a beacon of the Squamish and Lillooet culture and not a closed-in box. It's about sharing the culture. Well, as you can see, the post and beam structures on this arc that follow the shape of the hill. In the original Salish houses, they used the cedar planks. So we wanted to make this a transparent plank using like a bow truss, adding wood as an element to it to kind of give it a cultural reference. So it's a reinterpretation of the past, an abstraction.
With a new material.
With a new material. Most of my work is with First Nations people, and I listen from the elders to the youth about what is important to them. Be embedded into the culture of the people, inspired from the culture of the people, but looking towards the future. What they can do is they can lift all this exhibitry up in the air and populate this space with tables for banquets and stuff like that.
Oh, they could just yank this stuff up?
Yeah, it's all.
Are you
just-
kidding?
Yeah.
So you could have 400 people dining in here?
Yes, yes. Anishkin is an earth-covered winter home that the interior Salish people used to use, people from Lillooet. This is the Ishkin Hall. This is a multi-purpose space. This is kind of an abstraction of how the historic pit houses were. They had 4 angled poles, and each pole had a T-section in which 3 beams came off of.
And one of my favorite times to come by here is at night.
Right.
Because from below, you see the whole room glow. It's like
Yeah.
the hearth in the center of Whistler.
My mom was a Chippewan native, and my dad was an English fellow. So this is an interesting combination to produce an architect. I had the opportunity to have quite a close connection with the land. We didn't have running water. We had to pump our own water. We had honey buckets we had to change. It was cheaper to get a caribou and a moose in the fall than buy beef from the store. So I think all those things have a direct effect on who I am as a person. I picked up the book on Douglas Cardinal by Trevor Bodie. On introspection, looked at where I come from in Yellowknife. Says I really didn't like all these mining buildings that just look like eyesores in the landscape and all my native cousins living in social housing. Thinking, well, yeah, maybe I can do something. Maybe I can make a change. We're going to Squamish, and they have a sculpture park in the middle of the city. They used to have a pavilion there a number of years ago, but it became dilapidated and the homeless were sleeping in it, and it ended up becoming a problem for the RCMP, so they tore it down. They hired me to design this replacement pavilion. Initially, we were looking at an all-wood structure, but then because it was a regional project, we were getting the input of the RCMP, and of course the RCMP said, don't build anything. It'll just get burnt down. We don't want anything there. We don't want to have to deal with it. But if you're going to build something, we don't want any wood touching the ground. So we had to come up with a way of using steel struts and then join the wood using a glued connection where you don't see the big bolt fasteners. The inspiration really became, how do you express this location? For me, it's where the ocean meets the skies. So.
Oh, I get it. So those are waves.
Yeah, those are kind of a wave.
Ah. Well, you know, I think to understand this building, you almost have to talk about music, eh?
Yeah.
You know, like Bach, he has counterpoint. You know, there's
Right.
one thing going and nothing going, inverting it.
Yeah.
Same thing. So it's a real musical kind of a building.
Yeah. Every great architect wants to be remembered for creating a building that instills experiences to people that are memorable. I want to be remembered as someone who creates spaces that are full of soul and spirit, that are of the people and are respectful of the environment. At the heart of the message of what Indigenous people want to give connection to the land and the sacredness of the land, taking responsibility for global warming and how we live with Mother Earth. I think there's a bigger picture here that we're all dealing with, and I think the Indigenous people are going to serve as part of the solution and reshaping the way we think about things. Moving forward into the future, it's important that we bring the knowledge from the First Nations people and their connectedness to the land to find a new way to live with this earth.
I'm a member of the Crow Nation, known in our own language as the Apsalaka Nation.
There is a lot of obstacles in this work, and there always have been. I've been very fortunate to be able to make a living, not a particularly good one yet. As an Indigenous architect working with tribal communities, we're often involved way early on in the project when there's just an idea, and we're trying to help them get some initial funding. The tribes we're working with are struggling to get the dollars together to be able to do the work. They all think I've got like some big office somewhere. I'm like, I don't have a big office. I have a tiny little office, you know, and most of us don't, you know.
Morning.
Hey. And that's another obstacle. We're often up against big corporate firms with a lot of manpower, a lot of economic power that we don't have.
Maybe we could just do it with the way we do the flooring. Like we could we could pull in a darker material. You know?
I nearly left it, you know, kind of in frustration. Like, I don't want to design banks or, you know, big office towers for, you know, it just didn't interest me.
Like this. I mean, you could imagine them, you know, yeah, because
I became interested in this notion of what does it mean to be an Indigenous architect. I remember being interviewed and asked about it, and they said, what does it mean to be a Native American architect? And I said, well, you know, I don't really consider myself a Native architect. Native American architect, I consider myself a Crow architect. Like, I'm trying to just figure out what that is. I'm working with my own tribe, you know, how do I design for my community? Now I work for many different tribes, so within each one, I'm trying to find what is specific to that community. We've been working with the Puyallup tribe, which is a tribe just south of Seattle. We created a place called the Place of Hidden Waters. They needed a secure new housing type. So we developed a contemporary longhouse. Two-story apartments for families on one side, one-story apartments for elders on the other side. All sharing a single large roof designed so that you could put solar panels on that roof. We also utilize ground source heat. That dramatically lowers the heating and cooling costs of those homes.
The idea was that this would be like a kind of a corollary of the longhouse, where even though it's outside space, it still has that feeling.
The other thing that this corridor does, that it was designed to do, is bring the community together. So the doors that open towards each other and people get to visit with their neighbors. And there's a real sense of community because they're coming towards each other like they would have in a traditional longhouse where you have one family on one side, one family on the other side, and then they come together in the middle.
I want to thank you all for being here today. Welcome to this house, to this home. This is a place where our people have lived for thousands and thousands of years.
Ultimately, to me, the real test of what is an Indigenous architecture is whether the people, the Indigenous people who it's serving, actually see it as their own. They say, this is our place, this is ours. The meaning or the significance of being an Indigenous architect is it's a responsibility that we have to honor the people that we come from and the place that we come from. It gives my work a sense of a mission. There's tremendous suffering in Indigenous communities, and in my own reservation, there's extraordinary poverty and unemployment and challenges. But at the same time, there's such a beautiful and powerful culture. I see our work as Indigenous architects as carrying that culture forward through the medium of architecture.
My English name is Patrick Stewart. I'm from the Killer Whale House of Dakin, from the Niska village of Gingoish in northwestern British Columbia, what is now known as Canada. As an architect, I foreground Indigenous knowledge. I bring our culture out and try to support our nations. I grew up in Care, so I didn't grow up within my culture. My mom was homeless when I was born, so she didn't even take me from the hospital. The hospital kept me, released her, and I didn't see her again for 20 years. From the age of 5, I liked buildings. I would go out of my way, coming home from kindergarten, to go look at a building. I thought, I like the composition, I like how it sits, I like it. And I thought, that'd be pretty cool to create buildings like that. This is the Stonewall Resource Center. So when we started the design of this building, the inverted gable is based on an old longhouse from mid-1800s called Watery Eaves. And What they did is they took two single slope longhouse, which is a traditional form, and they put them back to back to make an eave in the middle. We have a raven on each end of the building, and what they did is the water gathered in that middle eave, and the raven's mouth was carved and it was open, so the water came out. We have the welcome figures here.
Mm-hmm.
We have the female on the left, the male on the right, and the female greets people with two hands, and the male just with one hand. When I design, I will try to put in as much cultural elements as I can that are visible. And the reason I do that is because I think that cultural elements were ripped violently away. Whole villages were taken away. So to me, to build that back again so that people can see what was there makes an impact. And it's, to me, it's a little bit of resistance, I guess, to say, we haven't gone away, we're still here. I didn't finally find my family until I was 27. I didn't know I had 2 brothers and 3 sisters and a mom. That took a while for me to discover that on my own, but it was great when I did. Having family surround me, that was really the beginning of my life, I suppose. This building is an assisted living building, so it's residential. And you'll see how, as the building curves, how the light comes into the building through the clear story. Architecture is more than just a building. There are people involved right from somebody's idea of what they want to build. So on opening day, they'll walk in and they'll feel invested in the building. I've gone back to buildings that, you know, are 20 years old or 25 years old, and you can tell they've been well taken care of. Those buildings are loved, right? And that's a good feeling. To me, that is a success.
My name is Wanda Della Costa. I'm a member of Saddle Lake Cree First Nation in Northern Alberta, Canada. Where's my mom? I'm a practicing architect here in the United States. I teach at Arizona State University. I teach Indigenous planning, architecture, and construction. What's important to me in the evolution of Indigenous architecture right now is for us to act as advocates for our tribal communities as well as our students, giving them a voice within the subject of architecture. So how do we bring this subject into construction? And of course, create classrooms where our Indigenous students can explore notions of indigeneity through design.
I'm Selena, and I'm from the Paskoyaki tribe. I recently graduated from the architecture program. I'll be coming back to grad school this next semester, and I'm just excited to be around fellow creative natives.
I'm in this class just because I want to see something that acknowledges the Indigenous presence on this campus. Some of us don't feel like we belong here. Some of us feel like there's no space for us.
When I would try and study Indigenous architecture, there were no texts, there were no writings. There were very few resources or publications available to understand this lens of indigeneity in architecture.
And that's the gathering space within the center of it, and the four.
So I think what changes now is that there's enough of us that we're creating this critical mass of perspectives and dialogue and discourse around the subject.
All right, we'll be in chat by email.
Thank you. Which the generation that is coming up now has to use for pushing the ideas in architecture further. This is Selena's first project that she's actually seen built.
First project. Yeah, she wants to come touch it.
It's a nice first project. This is so awesome.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see natural materials used, and obviously Adobe too, as materials that the community may want to use in the future. Or
you'll be able to see your work in process when we have our annual, what we call the Mochada, which is the gathering of the people. I welcome you and invite you to come out on that day to see it.
yeah, I definitely will be there. Yeah, I definitely can't wait to see people interacting with the structures and sitting on the benches.
Through architecture, there's so many powerful opportunities, not only to create space, but I think to connect to things within our culture that are so vital and for so long have been denied that we could practice.
I definitely want to keep doing Indigenous projects. I feel like it's more satisfying than working for bigger companies. You're helping communities that actually need help instead of doing projects that may not necessarily directly affect a group of people. It seems like it just means more to the people as well. They are really grateful, and the process is exciting.
Yeah. My mother grew up on the reservation, on the reserve, and she went through residential schools. The earliest memories, I would call it my lived experience, is going up to the res where all of your cousins are, where all of your kinship connections are. There's a particular project that I did that was just recently completed in the city of Calgary. The Nistatapasini Early Learning Center. It was designed for Indigenous students within an urban setting to learn through a traditional Indigenous learning model. I think it's profound that in one generation it's completely changed.
The 18 architects, they asked me to be a presenter. I then asked the grandmothers to guide me in that. And the grandmothers said, have everyone speak from their heart. Each of the architects spoke from their hearts.
Being a part of the Venice Biennale, I think it's something all architects dream of being a part of. But I think to be in it as a part of a group of Indigenous architects is a much more powerful thing. I think we are starting to be seen.
to be able to work with and get to know other Indigenous architects from not only America, but Canada too. This is a great opportunity to let the world see what our Indigenous designers and architects are capable of and what we're doing. People think that because we do Native work that it's less than. It's not the same quality, that it's easier somehow, when in fact it's way harder. So this is something I'm very proud of.
That was quite amazing because people got it. You know, when they went through the exhibit, they got it.
Go up to it, look at it.
Medicine Sunset Woman. I come from the Algonquian Nation on the other side of this very long plane ride that I came from. We are on unceded territory, and I wish to bring greetings from my people to your people here.
I'm so happy that everybody's come here in a circle. The soft power of love is greater than the hard power of force. And as long as we follow our grandmother's teachings, we will be caring and loving people and peaceful people, and see ourselves as a way of being able to make a major contribution to our brothers and sisters around the world. No matter what is around us, destruction of our environment and global warming, the Indigenous teachings can be the foundation for replanning and redesigning our cities so that they can be truly exciting places to create in. We have the responsibility of setting an example not only to their own nations, ultimately to the world as a whole. There's a sense of hope. I think that's beautiful.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.
If it's Thursday, the stage.
Okay, so go well, Greg. Let me switch this over here for a sec. Okay, so we talked about architecture and the way that we circle indigenous communities oftentimes create these areas of gathering, which are oftentimes in a circular shape. So there is a lot of that within our architecture, I believe. And I'm just going to show you real quick here a couple of short clips from our our university here in our town, we have a education or what we call the Wampum Learning Center, which is our Indigenous learning center at our university here. Um, just wanted to let you see what this looks like here. So let me go here. Uh, can
Welcome to the Indigenous Learning Space. The space is going to be used as a hub for our Western community, Indigenous communities. This is where we want all of our activities to take place. Workshops, speaker series, social events, community engagement. We want to keep this space as busy as possible. This space was designed with students in mind. Having a space like this where Indigenous youth can see themselves and want to attend this school because a space like this exists within Western, I think is probably the most exciting thing. This is a space where a lot of important work is going to be accomplished. I see it as a place of cultural reclamation, reconciliation, revitalization, respect, building those relationships between all of us. It's just a place of growth, of hope, of opportunity, and that's what students have been looking for. I'm just really excited to be able to invite everybody to the space. We want it to be a home away from home.
Bear Stuff just subscribed.
Going into university.
Sigoli, J Bear, Yonko for the resub. You're catching us just at the tail end of our stream here. I'm just, in fact, it was kind of funny. I was looking at Roxy and thinking I wanted to raid into her, and I see that she's just actually raided out. But the VOD for this stream will be posted, and Real Dreams, 19 months. Wow, that's Yonko. So much for that. In match, here we go. I'm over here. So 5 months, J-Bear. So as I was just putting in here, that turtle-shaped structure that you saw outside is where we often have our ceremonies. Oceanus Quay, or Dan and Mary Lee Smoke, who are huge mentors for me, have always done ceremony there. They've recently, just a year ago, got their honorary doctorates of law from Western University for all of their work. They have created a campus radio program called Smoke Signals, which of course is the longest running Indigenous campus radio program in Canada. So they've been doing it for more than 30 years, and so they were part of the opening of this learning lodge. So they call this the Wampum Learning Lodge, and of course the wampum is like our beads that we use for creating contracts. So I'm going to just show one more quick clip of this University Learning Lodge so that you can again get another angle of.
At Western, we're honoring First Nations and all Indigenous people by decolonizing the university and indigenizing the curriculum.
Here we're committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. We know that achieving that will take a lot of hard work.
One of our most important initiatives is the creation of a new Indigenous learning space. The building will be the center of Indigenous life on campus, with gathering spaces, indoor and outdoor classrooms, offices, and much more.
This space was designed by Canada's first female Indigenous architect, Wanda Dalla Costa. This space will feature Indigenous languages and artwork. Honor the four directions, our connection with the land and all living things. A space designed with a wholly Indigenous identity.
Western has come to a level of understanding of truth and reconciliation. And with truth and reconciliation, this is a good start, a good beginning. But yes, we need to listen and to look at and be creative. And how do we create space for Native students and continue to share and to empower them mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually?
The opening of the space is planned for September 30th, 2022, on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. A first major event for the space is already scheduled. Universities Canada's Building Reconciliation Forum. The forum will be held June 2023 and will bring together educators and scholars from across the country to advance reconciliation in the Academy.
We invite you to join us to honor Indigenous voices and to learn more about how we can achieve true reconciliation.
So this little turtle-shaped uh, structure here is, again, what I was referring to is where we have our ceremonies. Um, and Dan and Mary Lou oftentimes will be the conductors of those ceremonies when we're doing them here at Western University. So this is about 2 years old. This learning center. So it's really awesome that they built this. This round part here was actually originally a library, which they've transformed. So they gutted the place and renovated the entire inside of that building. So it's but they did it in a way that when we gather in a circle oftentimes to ensure that we are acknowledging everybody as equals within that circle. There is no head of the table, so to speak, within our gatherings. So a lot of times you will see any gatherings we have are done in circular forms. So I'm going to throw on a version of the Peaceful Warrior as we end all of our streams, and we'll continue with that tradition, and then we'll get ready to raid. I'll ask that I'll put in the raid calls when while this is playing. I want to say big Yonko again, C. Zerkley for using your Prime sub here, and J Bear for resubbing now for 5 months, and Carlos Wild Ride, who actually who subbed before I even came on. So thank you all for the support. So let me get this rendition of the Peaceful Warrior going, and then I'll put in the raid calls, and we'll get ready to go see someone. So copy a raid call, refresh your chat, and then come join us. Even if you have to raid and run, just come along and say hi to the next streamer. And then if you have to go, I completely get it. But I'm going to be actually getting ready to go to work soon. I won't be able to stay long, but I'll go over to who we raid into, and then we'll share and saying hi and all that greeting stuff. So let me go here, get this started.
My name's Amanda and I'm at war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. So what am I doing here? And what I really want to say is that the world has got to change its way. I'm talking about all the creatures from the water to the sky. I'm talking about all the issues from the truth to the lies. And I'm gonna make my stand with a paper and a pen. If you want to argue that, go back to bed again. So let's keep passing around our information, so we can improve this planet through education. Somebody's gonna make the people aware. Someone's gonna make everybody care. So pass my message on if you dare. My name Amanda, and I'm at war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. I'm going in to fight for the red, white, yellow, and black. Going to fight for the ones who can't fight back. There is more power in one man's voice than all the weapons of military choice. So with my voice and your voice, we can shout it out loud that we belong to the human race and we are proud. You don't have to be a master of science to see that we need to create a worldwide alliance. We've seen how the world can be devastated through the actions of men with minds of hatred. My name's Amanda and I'm at war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. But I won't be able to move the world all alone. So remember, this is also your home. My name's Amanda and I'm at war for peace. All senseless attacks I see must cease. So what am I doing here? And what I really want to say is that the world has gotta change its way.
Woo! All right. Glad we got that out of our system. Oh, Grace Slick